So the advice I'm going to give you in this video today got me into 3 medical schools, including King's College London and a Russell Group University, so it does work. I just want to quickly say that make sure you watch to the end of this video because every single information that I give you in this video today is important. The first thing you need to do before you start anything is make a flashcard set. So if you want to do it on paper, you can get like a set of record cards from like a supermarket or anywhere. But if you prefer to do it digitally, then I would recommend doing it on Quizlet. Once you make a flashcard set, title it like interviews or something so it's clear to you what it is, obviously. Then the first flashcards you're going to make in that set is going to be basically you're going to read through your personal statement and you're going to take every bit of work experience, workshop, any interest you mentioned, basically anything that the interviewers can quiz you on, go over them and know them at the back of your hand and know what kinds of things the interviewers are going to ask you about that. And then what you're going to do is you're going to make a flashcard. So for example, if you attended a workshop on the digestive system or something, then you can make a flashcard and basically the question of the flashcard would be, tell me about the digestive system workshop you mentioned in your personal statement. So basically what the interviewer could ask you. And then you're going to like add some bullet points for the answer of the flashcard about the workshop. So like, I learned about anatomy of the digestive system. I learned about the conditions of the digestive system. Don't pre-prepare an entire paragraph and memorize that paragraph because then the interviewers can kind of see that you're forcing the answers because like they're too perfect and they're coming out too concisely, and then you might get caught off guard if they try to ask you a follow-up question. So just list some bullet points to keep it natural and free-flowing when you answer it. Make sure you have, especially if you're doing healthcare, at least 2 to 3 work experiences that you can talk about, and this does not have to be like completely medicine related. It could just be like you worked in a pharmacy for a year like me. That hasn't got anything directly to do with medicine, but because it was still within the healthcare sector, I could talk about like patient-centered approaches, the biopsychosocial model, things like that. There's crossover, you get me? And it doesn't even have to be healthcare related at all. You could just say that you worked in a high street shop and then you learned how to improve your communication skills, which is important for being a doctor. Just any piece of work experience you have, as long as you can link it back to your chosen degree in some way, shape or form. And then obviously you would create flashcards about, tell me about XYZ work experience that you did on your personal statement that you mentioned, or just tell me about any work experience that you did. And then obviously you can list bullet points about the work experience so you can answer it in the interview. The next thing I'd recommend you do is read through some articles. So I found Medical Express was a fantastic website because they upload articles on there every single day from different universities about medical advancements. So then if you just read a couple of those and then make some notes on it and then put them into flashcards, like tell me about the probiotic backpacks you read about. You're just making the questions for yourself and then you just list a bunch of bullet points about the article that you read. And then when you do those and you learn those articles, those can be really versatile for many different questions within the interview. For example, if they were to ask you about, tell me about a recent medical advancement that you read about in the last 10 years, tell me about something you read around the subject of medicine recently, or tell me something you saw in the news recently, things like that. Any questions like that, because they're really common, especially in MMIs. If they were to ask you about that, then obviously you can just reference back your articles. They're really versatile in the sense that you can use them for a lot of different questions. Just as a side note here, something I forgot to mention in the video is also what I'd recommend you do is get the BBC News app and then read an article on BBC News every single day, obviously within healthcare, so that will keep you up to date with healthcare advancements as well. The next flashcards that you need to make is basically each medical school that you're applying for, look over their course structure and then make a flashcard in each of those. For example, I had, question was KCL course, so King's College London, the course structure, and then my answer was dissections from the first year, fairly traditional teaching style, first year focuses on the foundations of medicine and next few years are far more clinical. Reason I'm saying to make flashcards and learn the course structures is because if they were to ask you about like, what did you like about our university in terms of its course structure, why did you choose us, and obviously you have something to say that, I liked that you have like clinical years like from the beginning, I like that there are dissections, things like that, to show that you did your homework and you're not just blindly applying to random universities. You actually care about the university, which is going to give you more plus points when they consider whether they should give you a place or not. Then also make a flashcard for each of the universities in terms of what student societies and clubs they have to offer, because they may ask you in the interview, why did you choose our university and what can you offer for student life in our university, in which case you can reference the student societies and clubs and just say, I was really interested in the Badgers basketball club. You can just pull up one of the clubs or societies and talk about how you joined that and maybe make your own society along those lines or something like that. Again, you're just showing that you did your homework. work basically. Now you need to make a flashcard on this very common question they may ask you. It's, what is your weakness? This is a very tricky question in the sense that you don't want to come across as too like high and mighty that, oh yeah, my weakness is that I'm too much of a perfectionist, because let's be real, that's probably not your weakness, and everybody has weaknesses. No one is a saint. Again, you don't want to come across as too self-berating, which could put you at a disadvantage. So what I'd recommend you do is you think of a weakness that is easily fixable. For example, I think my weakness was that I tend to be quite tunnel visioned in the way I deal with things. Like, I want to get things done like in order. I don't want to delegate tasks, I don't want to delay or postpone tasks. I just want to get one task done, and I don't like to think about anything else. But then through the world of work, when I started working my jobs, I learned to delegate. I learned to see other tasks and delegate and postpone tasks accordingly to make things more efficient for me in terms of how I handle things and handle tasks. So see what I did there? I gave a really easily fixable problem, not too serious, just something that could hold me back, and then I gave a solution and I said how I've been working on this. Then you need to make a flashcard on a teamwork scenario. So the question would be, give an example where you demonstrated good teamwork. Then obviously think of a scenario within your life where you have demonstrated teamwork. You need to do that also for conflict resolution and how you've dealt with a negative situation as well, because those are common questions they could ask you, especially like dealing with a negative situation and stuff. Then they may ask you this question, which is, why do you want to be a doctor? Why do you want to do medicine? So you need to make a flashcard on that. Avoid cliches like the plague. You may very well want to actually help people, and that is like perfectly valid and really good on you, but say it in a slightly less cliche way. So for example, my one was, I want to do medicine because it's a pathway into the complexities of the human body, and one where you can translate this knowledge in many ways. And then I went on to explain each point, talking about my work experience, my dealings with patients, in which you could slip in there that you want to help people, because I wanted to help my patients within my pharmacy job. And then that is a way to show that you want to help people without coming across too cliche, if that makes sense. Then you need to make a flashcard on the qualities of a good doctor, because that is something else they may ask you in many different forms of questions. So here are a few qualities that I've come up with as well, so maybe make a note of this if you can. Just pause the video and get a piece of paper if you haven't already. So we have empathy, communication, teamwork, level-headedness, leadership, analytical ability, and determination. Next, you need to make flashcards on ethical key terms, because that is really important, especially within the field of medicine, because they talk about ethics a lot. So you want to make a flashcard on the ethical pillars, so the 4 ethical pillars. So that was autonomy, justice, beneficence, and non-maleficence, and understand what each one is. Also make flashcards on other ethical terms you may come across, for example utilitarianism, which is the principle of greatest good for the greatest number of people, and do your research into other ethical legislation and guidelines, such as presumption of capacity and Gillick competence. Then you need to make flashcards on any other key terms, so not related to ethics directly, but any key terms related to medicine, for example multidisciplinary team, the biopsychosocial model, and values-based recruitment within the NHS. Going back to medical ethics, now make a flashcard or a few flashcards on different medical ethics cases. For example, you can make one flashcard case where it says, tell me about the Bauer-Garber case, and then list some stuff about the Bauer-Garber case. For example, my flashcard was, mistakes made in the Bauer-Garber case. There was a delay in X-ray results, delay in blood test results, medication stopped and not logged, and there was a DNAR mix-up. Other medical ethics cases you can talk about is Ian Patterson and Andrew Wakefield. Next, you need to make a few flashcards on key global challenges, so that can include COVID-19. You can make a flashcard on aging and multimorbidity, which is very prevalent now because, you know, the world is aging because we are living for longer. Talk about staff shortages within the NHS and make flashcards on that. For example, 1 in 12 posts in the NHS were vacant as of 2019. The issues with nursing, which has the highest number of vacancies. And then also brush up on your knowledge about vaccinations and make a flashcard on that. So my flashcard was, what's going on with vaccinations? So I said measles and mumps cases are rising. The university population weren't vaccinated as much as children because of the Andrew Wakefield controversy, going back to medical ethics, and the UK has not reached its target of 95% coverage and has lost its measles-free status. And obviously I made this flashcard in 2023, so it might have changed by then. Next, make a flashcard on a public health campaign. So I used FAST for stroke because they may ask you about that, like talk about a public health campaign if they're talking about public health in general. Then make a flashcard on what you think to be the most important medical discovery, and I said diagnostic radiography. Next, you need to make flashcards on the NHS. You make a flashcard on a brief brief history of the NHS in case they were to ask anything about that. So who founded the NHS? I said, and then my answer was Aneurin Bevan, a Labour politician, in 1948. The NHS should be funded by general taxation and national insurance contribution. Henry Willink wrote the white paper in 1944 laying out the founding principles. You don't need to have all of that, to be honest, just a few like short bullet points will be fine. Then you'd have the 6 core values of the NHS. So 1, respect and dignity, commitment to quality of care, 3, compassion, 4, improving lives, 5, working together for patients, and 6, everyone counts. You talk about the future of the NHS if they were to ask you about that, so what could happen later on down the line. You talk about devolution of healthcare services tailored to local areas, better integrated care, and effective allocation of resources. And there could be the issue of the postcode lottery as well. If you don't know anything about that and you have no idea what I'm talking about, I'd recommend go and research it before you make your flashcards because you want to have a good understanding of it. I don't want to go into too much details in this video because I want to keep it a bit more brief. Then you can talk about how funding is allocated in the NHS. So you have the Department of Health and Social Care at the top. Then you have it divided into 2 categories, capital and day-to-day. Then it's further subdivided between NHS England, vaccinations, public health, training and regulation. And then it's further subdivided down to national spending and CCGs. CCGs are clinical commissioning groups. Again, I don't want to go into too much detail about what they are in this video because I want to keep it a bit more short. Then you can talk about challenges faced by the NHS and make a flashcard on that. So I said challenges faced by the NHS as a question, and the answer was lack of sufficient funds, lack of staff, need for technological innovations, cancelled operations and redeployment, and private healthcare and inequalities. Then I talked about the principles of the NHS. So the question was, tell me some principles of the NHS. The answer was comprehensive service to all, based on clinical needs, not ability to pay, highest standards of excellence and professionalism, needs and preferences of patients, across organisational boundaries, best value for taxpayers' money, and it's accountable to the public. Then I said, what are the 6 C's of the NHS? We're nearly done, I'm so sorry. It was care, compassion, courage, communication, commitment, and competence. And then finally, the core principles of the NHS, the 3 ones that I've got here is everyone's needs are met, it's free, and it's needs-based, not financial. Then you want to make a flashcard distinguishing the roles of the physician associates, the doctors, and the nurses. It's important you know the difference between the 3 so that you don't get them mixed up and confused because they could ask you about this potentially in the interview. I believe I got asked about physician associates in one of my interviews, so it's very important that you know what they are so you don't start waffling and say some wrong stuff, and then that can clearly show that you don't really know what you're getting into if you can't distinguish between the roles. Next, you want to make a flashcard on the Fraser Guidelines, which is again an important piece of legislation that you may need to know about. And then finally, you'd want to go over your structures for responses. Have a general structure when answering questions in the interview so you don't run off on tangents and start waffling on. So one of the structures that I had was STAR, which stands for situation, task, action, results and reflection. I also had another acronym called KISS, which stands for keep it simple stupid. Basically just keep your answers simple, don't start waffling on and on and on because you have a limited time within your interviews and it can come across as not so good if you're unable to keep your answers concise and to the point. Also, I have 2 key phrases to hand. The 2 key phrases are the bottom line is, and this is important because that is basically a way to pull yourself back in if you feel yourself running off on a tangent. And here are 3 final flashcards that I want you to make. The first one is how would you break bad news, because there may be a scenario they may give you within the interview in which you need to break bad news to a patient. The question in your flashcard would be how do you break bad news? The answer would be number 1, enter the scenario, number 2, deliver a warning shot, number 3, deliver the news, and number 4, give the patient a plan of action. The second to last flashcard you would make is how do you communicate with the patient? So that's the question of your flashcard. The answer would be number 1, build a rapport through introduction, introduce yourself basically. Number 2, start with open questions to explore the issue. 3, ask closed questions to empathize. Closed questions are questions that have a fixed number of responses. And then number 4 would then, again like the last flashcard, is to create an action plan for the patient. The last flashcard you would make is how would you approach empathy within a scenario. So you would listen, you would understand the patient's beliefs and expectations, you would try and relate to them so you know how to respond, paraphrase back to them and address any wrong expectations. And I know I said that was the last flashcard, but I was just scrolling through my flashcards and I saw one more that I think is really important as well. It's what aspects of being a doctor do not appeal to you. You need to have a clear understanding of some of the downsides of being a doctor so that the interviewer knows and is confident that you know what you're getting yourself into and that you know it's not all going to be sunshine and rainbows. So I said a fast-paced environment and heavy workload, but make sure you be honest about the downsides, but then finish on a positive note as well so the interviews are aware that although you know the downsides, you know that this is still something that you want to go into, and it's not something that's going to hold you back if you were to get into medicine. And that is it. That is the flashcard set complete. Now what you need to do once you have that flashcard set all done and dusted is you need to be practicing that every single day. The more you practice that flashcard, the quicker you're going to be able to get through the flashcard set eventually, even though it seems like it's a lot in the beginning. Also, alongside practicing the flashcard set, make sure you're practicing mock interviews with people. If you can, try and arrange it within your college, or ask friends or family to practice some mock medicine questions with you. You can find mock medicine interview questions online if you just search it up. And then one more thing is to read over the GMC guidelines. I know the GMC guidelines are really long, but you do not need to know the whole thing off by heart. It's just like when you're learning to drive, you know, you have the highway code. You're not expected to know the entire highway code. You're just expected to have a general understanding of it, especially for your theory test. And yeah, that's all my advice I can offer you for your medicine interviews. I don't think I have anything left to say other than good luck with your interviews. You got this. Hopefully with all the advice I've given you, you'll be able to smash it. And yeah, bye guys.